Okay, let's unpack this. When you hear Vox, what probably comes to mind first are those massive amps, right? The ones with the basket weave grill cloth stacked high. I mean, that's the sound of the British invasion, the Beatles, the Stones, totally. But today, we're actually doing a deep dive into something else Vox did, something that, well, permanently changed how guitars sound. We're talking effects pedals, specifically the pedal that kind of set the blueprint for decades of musical expression.
Yeah, so our sources today, they really trace the story of Jennings Musical Industries JMI, the parent company of Vox. And it's about how this very British brand ended up creating one of rock's most iconic sounds. But here's the twist. A lot of the key engineering actually happened way over in California. So our mission today is to figure out how and why that whole transatlantic thing worked.
It's fascinating, isn't it? What really stands out is just how fast everything moved back then. Vox nailed the amp market, boom, but they saw the next big thing was effects. And they realized, maybe quicker than others, that winning wasn't just about invention, it was about manufacturing globally, like right now. That need for speed, for that two-continent strategy, that's what really made history here.
That speed is definitely key. So Vox starts as part of JMI, Jennings Musical Industries. Tom Jennings, 1957. And almost overnight, they become the amp for all those huge British bands. They just had the sound everyone wanted. But the guitarists using those amps, they wanted more, didn't they? By the mid-'60s, you had this explosion of sonic experimentation. Fuzz first, then that really expressive wah sound. Vox knew they had to get in the game, effects-wise, quickly. But interestingly, they didn't start by, inventing their own circuits from day one.
That's right. If you look at the early fuzz scene, particularly in London, it was really interconnected, like a tight little world. Vox needed something now, so they did what's called OEM work.
OEM. Okay, maybe let's quickly break that down for anyone not, living in the manufacturing world. What's OEM mean here?
Sure thing. So think of it like this. You've got one company, Solus Sound in this case, right? They design and build a really popular fuzz circuit, the tone bender. Then another company, Vox, comes along. They buy that circuit, or maybe the whole finished pedal, put their own brand name on it, Vox Tone Bender, and sell it. Solosound made the original equipment, Vox branded it, and Solosound was doing this for Marshall too, around the same time. So Vox gets the Vox Tone Bender out there. It just shows how much partnership mattered. It wasn't always about who invented it first, but who had the brand power and the distribution network to sell it. Vox had the name, Solosound had the fuzz circuit. So they teamed up.
Okay, so the fuzz strategy was London-based, all about speed and leveraging existing tech through partnership. Makes sense. But then we get to the wah, the really famous Vox pedal. And that, as you said, involved this huge leap across the Atlantic. Why did JMI, this big successful British company, need a U.S. partner for that particular project?
Well, partly distribution, definitely. The U.S. market was just enormous, much bigger potential. But it wasn't just distribution. Critically, they needed some specific engineering know-how for the guts of the wah sound. And that's where the Thomas Organ Company comes in. Based in California, they were Vox's U.S. partner. Thomas Organ handled making and selling Vox stuff in America. And it was there, around 66, that an engineer named Brad Plunkett kind of stumbled onto the wah circuit.
Stumbled. Okay, that sounds less like some grand design and more like
a
happy accident. What was he actually trying to do?
It really was sort of an accident, yeah. He wasn't aiming for a guitar effect at all. He was working on Thomas organs. Specifically, he was trying to find a cheaper way to get this sort of pulsating sound effect called repeat percussion. The old use these bulky, expensive, rotating speaker things. So Plunkett develops this solid-state circuit, uses a potentiometer, a variable resistor to sweep the sound's frequency electronically instead of mechanically. Cheaper, smaller. And the story goes, he plugged a guitar into this test circuit, probably just messing around, and suddenly realized, whoa, if you put this frequency sweep control into a foot pedal, like an organ volume pedal, you get this incredibly vocal, expressive wah-wah sound.
That's just brilliant. A cost-cutting exercise for an organ accidentally births maybe the most iconic guitar sound of the mid-'60s. Amazing. And the way they marketed it was pretty smart, too, wasn't it? The whole Clyde McCoy thing.
Oh, yeah. Pure marketing genius, really. When they released the Vox Clyde McCoy wah-wah in 1967, they didn't sell it as some futuristic new sound. No, they marketed it as mimicking the wah-wah mute sound of a famous jazz trumpeter, Clyde McCoy. Gave it this instant kind of classy musical backstory, even if it wasn't quite the whole truth of its origin. Backstory aside, musicians got it immediately. It was game-changing. Like, within months, you had Jimi Hendrix, Eric Clapton, Jimmy Page. They all grabbed onto it. It wasn't just another sound effect. It became a way to phrase notes, like a human voice. And boom, the Vox wah, specifically that early design, became the absolute blueprint. Almost every wah since owes something to it.
So Thomas Organ in the U.S. wasn't just sticking Vox labels on things. They were the R&D engine, the production powerhouse for this key product. How vital was that split, UK and U.S. operations, for Vox's early success in the effects world?
Connecting the dots, it was absolutely vital. Thomas Organ didn't just engineer the V846 and the first Clyde McCoy pedals. They handled all the production and logistics for North America. Meanwhile, JMI back in the UK took care of Europe. This meant Vox was basically hitting both continents simultaneously with these new, complex pedals. That kind of global reach in 1967, almost unheard of for effects back then. None of their rivals could really match that scale.
And with the Wobble being such a massive hit, Vox didn't just stop there, did they? They seemed to really embrace that treadle pedal format in the late 60s.
And they totally did. We mentioned the Vox Tone Bender, the licensed fuzz, and even earlier, around 65, they had this weird little thing, the Vox Distortion Booster. Tiny plug-in fuzz boost thing, battery-powered, went right into your guitar jack. A bit quirky, maybe ahead of its time, but it showed they were trying everything.
But the main focus stayed on that treadle design, the one Plunkett had accidentally pioneered. They iterated on it pretty fast.
Exactly. After the first Clyde McCoy model, they brought out variations like the King Vox wah, but the one that really became the standard, the kind of definitive version, was the Vox V846 wah. That came out around 1968.
Why the V846? What made that one the enduring standard over the original Clyde McCoy?
Well, the V846 kind of ironed out some kinks from the very early production runs. Consistency, reliability, that sort of thing. See, the original Clyde McCoys often used a specific component called a phasal inductor, give it that really vocal talk. But getting enough of those consistently, that became tricky as production ramped up. The V846 standardized the design, sometimes used a different inductor type, maybe more stable pots, the part your foot actually moves. So the V846 ended up being just more dependable unit to unit, which is huge if you're a touring pro, right? It's really that V846 designed the mechanics of the treadle, plus that filter circuit inside that everyone else started trying to copy. That became the archetype.
And they even tried multi-effects in that same treadle housing before stomp boxes really took over, right? Combining things.
Absolutely. They clearly saw the treadle as the platform.
Yeah.
So yeah, they made units that combined wah and fuzz, or wah and volume control, in one pedal. It was pretty ambitious trying to create this all-in-one floor unit back then. The tech maybe wasn't quite robust enough yet for those complex combos. But it shows Vox was thinking ahead, trying to define what a pedal board might look like, even if the parts weren't fully ready.
But despite all this innovation, especially with the wah, Vox's time truly dominating the pedal scene was, well, pretty short-lived. The sources point to some major instability around the company right when things should have been booming. What went wrong?
Yeah, that instability is key to understanding why they eventually lost ground to newcomers like MXR and Boss. It's kind of sad, actually. Tom Jennings, the founder, the guy who started it all, he left JMI in 1967, right when the wah was taking off. And his departure kicked off this whole series of ownership changes, financial problems, just general chaos at the top. So while Thomas Organ was still cranking out great wah pedals over in the US, the main company back in the UK just didn't have that stable leadership or the focused R&D needed to keep innovating across a wider range of pedals. Then, by the mid-70s, you get these lean, focused companies popping up. Electro-Harmonix, MXR, and then Boss. They specialized in those smaller, tougher, single-effect stomp boxes. And Vox, dealing with its internal issues, just couldn't keep pace. They gradually shifted their main focus back to amps, which is where they started.
So putting it all together, if Vox didn't end up with a giant pedal catalog like Boss or EHX, why do they still loom so large in effects history? Why this deep dive? What's the big takeaway?
Oh, they matter hugely. It really boils down to, I think, three main things about their impact, lasting impact. First, and most obviously, they are the wah originator. Simple as that. Okay, Maestro had the fuzz tone first, kicking off distortion. But Vox, through that Thomas Organ partnership, they delivered the first practical, widely adopted, foot-controlled expression pedal. That action alone cemented the wah right up there with fuzz and maybe phaser as one of the absolute foundational effects. It just changed everything.
Right. And second, you mentioned the partnerships.
Yeah. The second point is about how they did it. That OEM deal with Sola Sound for fuzz, relying on Plunkett in the US for the wah, it shows just how critical those early partnerships and that transatlantic manufacturing setup were. Innovation wasn't happening in a vacuum. They won big early on, not by hoarding secrets, but by finding the right talent in the right place and leveraging their massive brand recognition.
Okay, originator and strategic partnerships. What's the third key takeaway?
The third is just sheer longevity, the staying power of that original wah design. Despite all the company turmoil, despite decades of competition trying to build a better wah, that basic Vox wah architecture, especially stemming from the V846, is still the benchmark, more than 50 years later.
It really is astonishing, isn't it, that one product, one specific design could have such an enduring legacy, and you still see it today. Modern reissues like the V847A, the signature models. So even though Vox didn't build this huge pedal empire, that wah sound, that specific treadle mechanism, it's forever tied to the Vox name. And surprisingly, its Californian roots. So yeah, we started this deep dive talking British amps, the sound of London, and we ended up with a design engineered in California, born from an organ part, no less, a sound that rock gods everywhere adopted almost instantly. It really shows the power of the right idea, the right partnership, hitting at exactly the right moment, turning, like you said, a cost-cutting need into pure musical expression.
Absolutely. And, thinking about that longevity, it raises a really interesting question for you, the listener, mull over. Given how much guitar technology has exploded since 1967, digital modeling, sophisticated electronics, everything, why has that fundamental Vox wah design, the V846 mechanical and electronic setup, proven so incredibly hard to truly improve upon or replace? Is it just some magic in the old components? Is the mechanical design somehow perfect? Or did they just somehow get it completely right first time out? Something to think about next time you hear that iconic wacka wacka on a classic track.